Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dear Rach and Soph, where I, Rachel Johns, talk with my fabulous friend and fellow author.
Sophie Green, hello.
I'm like, will I say your name? Will you say your name? Really should, work this out. But
Part of
yes,
the charm, Rach, that we don't have a set routine, I
I
think.
can't believe today we're both wearing red. For those people who are listening, Sophie is wearing a bright red kind of jumper, and I am wearing a slightly darker reddish kind of jumper with white hearts all over it. So, yes, that's totally coincidence.
We have been known to turn up with matchy
Pink.
palettes on, well, pink, but also the episode I published today, July the
Mhm.
6th, the day we're recording, is the Leonie
Oh,
Kelsall
yep.
episode. And you and I were both wearing dark colors, which
Oh,
is, as in,
that's,
I'm wearing blue and you're wearing, I think, a black or a gray or something. And I thought, well, that's unusual in itself, but we both
yeah,
did it on the
very
same day.
unusual. Although I do have a few, like, I'm getting more like black t-shirts with slogans, especially some of the ones that I've got in my online store. So,
Oh, I think it was a t-shirt. I think it was a t-shirt that
yeah,
was reading is sexy. There you go.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it. Actually, I'm wearing it
What's wearing
underneath.
underneath? Oh, nap. There
Hilarious.
you go.
Too funny. Anyway, sorry everyone. This is again not a passion for us. How are you
Well,
be? How are you going? I've
kind of
been
partly.
driving today.
You've been
Actually,
driving
well, I
and
should say I haven't been driving. I went overnight, about 2.5 hours away to visit my brother and sister-in-law, have dinner in a country pub, and then stayed the night in an old convent. It's called,
ooh,
right? And then literally drove back first thing this morning because my youngest child is learning to drive, and we have been very bad at getting the hours up, and so we decided we will go visit family, which was probably long overdue as well. So yeah, I drove, but it was about 3 hours all up because of slightly slower because of learning and stops and stuff. So that was me this morning, and I got to read in the back of the car the whole way. And usually I don't read in cars because I can't, but I have discovered I can read an e-reader in a car, and
huh?
I've got a new Kobo, and so now I feel so happy because I'm just like, I feel like I've suddenly scored. Not that I go places that much, but I'm like, it feels like a new skill.
Well, and it's highly portable, the
I
Kobo.
know, and I've never been able to do that before. So I'm just, even phones, I can't look down on a phone or it, but there's something about the Kobo that
I
makes it
wonder if it's the
okay.
lighting on it or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. I don't think I've had a Kindle before, and I bought a Kobo because I'm trying to not support Amazon as much as I can, to support local booksellers when I'm
mhm.
buying print. And sometimes it's, I just feel like I'm getting overflowed with books. I get sent lots and stuff. So if I can buy the digital, I'm trying to do that. And also it means that I can read at night without bothering my husband. But now, bonus, I can read in the car too.
And you may also be able to borrow ebooks from your library.
Yes.
That's, yeah,
Yeah,
there
you
you go.
can. I have to get onto that actually as well. So yeah, I read half a book today, so I'm feeling great.
You want to share which book it
I
is?
was reading it's a romance novel called It's a Love Story about Annabelle Monaghan. There's actually a lady on Substack who writes a Substack called, I don't know if you've probably seen it or follow it. It is I'm just trying to find it here. It's called Smart Romance or something. And yeah, by Rennie. And she has got 3 essays on Substack so far.
Mhm.
Basically her thing is she wants to talk about why romance deserves real criticism, or she wants to critique romance novels like people critique, serious fiction. And she
Mhm.
writes them because she said it deserves it because it's a cultural and economic juggernaut. So why aren't we giving it the same,
Mhm.
attention as some other fiction? And so she's written so far 3 essays. The first was about Emily Henry, and which was really interesting. And then the last one was about Annabelle Monaghan, who's written about five. She's written some YA, but five sort of women's fiction rom-com novels. And I didn't love her first one, but everybody did. It was
Right.
Nora Goes Off Script. I'm sure some of our listeners would have read it. My cousin adored it. So I hadn't read any more, but her essay made me want to read it. So yeah, that's what I'm reading. Trying to get a bit of crime in there too, as I'll soon be dipping back into writing The Crime with Mercedes. Also
Yeah.
trying to read, stuff for podcasts. And yeah, what are you reading and what's going on in your life?
Well, I mentioned the date at the top because today is a day that has significance for me because in 2011, on July the 6th, I was in a coma. So it was the one
That
day of my life that I did not have that year because I was induced into the coma on the 5th and I was brought out of it on the 7th. And that was
did you
because
know you were going to be induced into it, or you were out of
no,
it
I
by
went
that?
into emergency at Royal North Shore Hospital in Sydney. I had a life-threatening illness. It was very sudden, and basically I went into surgery not knowing if I would live, and therefore when they
How
put me
terrifying.
under for the surgery, I didn't know what would happen, and it just turned out that my lungs were collapsing and all sorts of stuff was happening. So they had to put me in an induced coma. I was intubated and then brought out of it on the 7th, which is my brother's birthday. So since then, it's just that this weird kind of thing of, oh, it was a day I didn't have. But
Yeah.
today, I was actually, well, I'm recording this with you, and I at lunchtime was doing an in conversation with Jane Caro at a place in Sydney called the Epping Club, where I appeared last year as an author.
Yeah.
And this time I was asking the questions
You're on
of
the other side.
yeah, and there were people there from your readers retreats, Rach. There were three
Oh,
people from
great.
readers retreats who I'd seen last year at the event I did. Saw them recently in Perth, obviously, when we were there.
Yes.
And it just made me think, well, when I was that sick and my whole life was ground to a well, what didn't grind to a halt, it actually came to a screaming stop
Yeah.
because I needed nursing care for weeks. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move properly because I had a surgical wound that required a lot of care, and I couldn't read.
Were you an agent then, or were you working in
I was
public?
an agent, yeah. So and to be frank, I when I went into hospital, I my life was not great. I was not in a good place. I felt like I just didn't know what I was doing. There was some difficult stuff going on at work. I had some things going on where I live that were not going to be easy to manage. I just kind of thought I was a failure and
Yeah. Oh.
had no thoughts of writing novels at all. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it wasn't like, oh, I have these thwarted creative dreams. I don't think I had any dreams when I look back
Wow.
now. I think I just don't know that there was anything motivating me. I was teaching yoga a lot,
Yeah.
but couldn't do that.
Do
Uh,
you think that like that near death experience, as we would call it,
mhm, mhm.
um like was like you often see in so many novels where it's kind of a turning point in your life?
It was a turning point because I made it one. And a lot of people afterwards would say to me, oh, well, everything happens for a reason. And I actually can't stand that
Oh,
phrase.
I
It
hate
makes me
that
feel
phrase too.
violent because
I
I
don't think that's true.
it's toxic positivity. And I
Yeah.
think it's well-intentioned toxic positivity for the most part, but it implies that you actually should make something of what may have been a catastrophic event in
Yeah.
your life. Now, I did make something in that I survived. I had
Mm.
choices to make as this was going along to keep me alive. I'm still here. My
Yeah.
life was very difficult for months afterwards because I had to physically recover and I just did not know what I'd be capable of. The
Yeah.
physical
Wow.
part, the wound recovered, but my brain was a mess because I'd had all those drugs from the coma. Like I just didn't know
Yeah.
what I was
Yeah.
going to be doing. And what pulled me out of the whole thing was starting to write about country music. So this was
No,
this
that's
one step at a time idea of something that my yoga teacher has said about Manipura chakra, which is the chakra at the
yeah.
solar plexus. It's about showing up and sticking with it.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's a good lesson for the writers that are listening, isn't it?
that's what I did. I showed up and stuck with it every day to recover. And then once I decided to write about music, I just kept showing up for the music. And
Mm.
I've talked about my country music life before, but that's now this huge part of my life that I love and led to me writing novels. I had
Yeah.
no idea that was coming. I didn't know if my life was going to be worth living, actually.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was the easier path would have been to not live because it was very hard to continue. So I say this not for any kind of pity or woe is me or this was awful, but it's more just that we can make things out of the darkest, worst times of our
Yeah.
lives just by showing up. You do not need the grand, dramatic gesture of, oh, I'm going to transform everything and my whole life is going to be
Yeah.
different and better. It's actually just show up for yourself, make a decision that you're worth it. And I do believe it's making a decision that you are worth it. You're worth showing up for. And then just keep applying it. There will be days when you don't feel like it. Just remind yourself that you need to stick up for yourself and stick up for the things you want to do in this life. You don't need to have grand ambitions. You don't need to have big things you're trying to achieve. Just being here is beautiful.
You know, I just went and looked for something when you were talking, because what you're saying reminds me of something I restacked this week on Substack. And while it's not exactly writing just related, but what you're saying is, for everything, isn't, she said, you don't need to feel inspired, you just need to sit down. And I thought that is really good advice sometimes for writing. And what you're saying is, you need to turn up, kind of thing. You need to, yeah.
I think it is, we can really get caught up. And sorry, I'm sounding distracted because our two guests have arrived in the waiting room. I'm just sending them a message to say,
We're almost there.
We're almost there. So multitasking, Rach.
Yeah, I totally relate.
So, yeah, I think it's just we see so much stuff about how you have to have big dreams, and I do think that can set up this whole thing where you feel like if you don't have a big dream, then really what are you going for? What is worth chasing in this life? So you don't actually have to have dreams at all. Just show up and see where the day takes you a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I completely acutely realize that for people with anxiety and depression and shades of depression, that can be really difficult. I understand that because I've been there, and I can assure you that in the depths of despair, as I was recovering, there were plenty of times when it just didn't feel like it was worth it. But I kept showing up because I just thought,
I'm glad you did.
Try. Me too.
I'm glad you're here now and making lots of fabulous stories for everyone to enjoy. And I'm glad you're my friend.
And I'm glad you're my friend too, Rachel. So thank you for showing up for me. And we're now going to both show up for some writers who are in the waiting room. So
excellent.
We have a subject.
Yep. We
have a subject this week of a second novel syndrome, and we have Emma Pei-Yin and Salman Shad as our guests. So Emma Pei-Yin is an Australian Hong Kong Chinese writer and editor. Her work has been featured in several publications. In 2023, she was nominated as Bookseller of the Year. That same year, her manuscript, Chasing Echoes in the Rain, was shortlisted for the Allen and Unwin Voices from the Intersection Mentorship Program. She lives and works on Ngunnawal country with her partner, and they're extremely barky-dashend. When Sleeping Women Wake is her first novel. It is out now from Hachette.
Awesome. And our other fabulous guest is Salman Shad. She's a writer, journalist, and playwright whose storytelling spans stage, screen, and page. In the UK, she was a scriptwriter for BBC Radio, and after relocating to Australia, she created programs for the ABC and became a sought-after voice in journalism. Her plays have been commissioned by theatres in both London and Sydney. Her debut novel, The Matchmaker, was published by Penguin Australia in 2023, and her new novel is The Sex Lives of Married Women.
Which is intriguing. And I thought I should hold those up because I have both of those books physically with me. So Yay! There we go. If you're watching, you can see those books in my hand.
If not, go check them out because they're got very what's the word, unique. Both have you very visually it's easy to remember those covers, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to put us on pause, and then I'm going to admit our guests, and I'll see you soon.
See ya. Hi, Emma and Salman. Thank you so much for joining us. Sophie and I are both thrilled to have you here to talk about second book syndrome, or just second books.
Yeah.
Lovely to be here.
Thanks for having me. We should kind of because some people will be watching, and most people, well, we don't know, some people will be listening. So they probably got used to Sophie's and my voices by now. So hopefully they can work out Salman and Emma eventually. Salman, say something. Tell us about your latest book.
Well, my latest book is called The Sex Lives of Married Women, and it came out on the 1st of April. And thank you, Sophie, for holding that up. And yeah, it's my second book. The first one was The Matchmaker, which came out in 2023. And I have all the feels when it comes to second book syndrome. So I am very excited to talk to you guys about this.
That's Salman. Now we'll have Emma. Do you want to give us a similar introduction? Sorry, Sophie, I've already gone on road.
Oh, that's great. No, I love it.
I just thought people need to know who's talking.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Emma. So my debut novel is a historical fiction novel called When Sleeping Women Wake. Thank you, Sophie, for holding that up. It's a novel about three women. We have a mother, her daughter, and their maid as they navigate love, loss, and survival during the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong during World War II.
And Emma, I'm just going to ask you because for people who are watching, there are a lot of people who listen to us who are fascinated by cover design. Now, over your shoulder, I can see the
Oh, yeah,
other
different
cover
ones.
for your book. Are you able to reach that easily and actually bring that forward because it's quite a
I'm
different
gonna
cover?
wheel across. Wait.
Don't worry, you like me. Like I always worry when I let the dog in because below, you see my crazy pink Crocs and stuff, and all. I don't want to see people below here.
Oh, you have 3 different
I was
covers.
wearing my pajama pants and I was like, maybe I'll wear something a little bit more like loungewear-y just in case I have to stand up.
There you go.
So funny.
I have the UK one. This is
Wow.
Okay.
the UK cover.
Right.
Hazel Lamb designed the Australian and the UK cover.
Wow.
And we actually connected on Instagram, and we have this really bittersweet story, which is that her grandmother also survived the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong like mine.
Right.
So it was, yeah, so
So
this
it's
is
probably
the
quite
lucky one.
meaningful for her to design that cover as well. Like it was an
Yeah.
extra special connection for her. Yeah.
It was really meaningful, and she came to my launch in Sydney just the other day,
Oh.
and literally afterwards I went running up to her and we just had like a cuddle for like 5 minutes.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah, and then this is the US one.
Right. So anyone who's watching can see this is actually a great example of how cover design can be and different. And this is a tangent I didn't expect to take us on, but I just thought it was useful to do it because cover design can be really different amongst the English language territories and, for that matter, translation territories. And those 3 covers of your books are quite different to each other. So that's fascinating. How did you feel about that when you were presented with these different covers?
I feel as though obviously with the Aussie and the UK one I had a bit more, there was more collaboration on both sides,
Which
and
we
I was
often
extremely
hear.
lucky. And I was really lucky as a debut author to actually get that sort of collaboration.
Mhm.
But with the US, it was pretty much like, here are your options,
Okay.
pick one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
No, I know we've gone off on a tangent, but I just want to say that Saman has 2 books out already, obviously. And I don't know if they're around the world or not, but I do know that your cover in Australia for the first one is quite different to your cover in the second. So have you got any feelings about covers and, branding? Do you have a preference? I'm ready to ask all the hard questions here, but you can always say no comment.
We should say the cover for the first
Never
one.
say no comment.
Pink and orange, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would never say no comment. I'm also a journalist, so like no comments like the worst answer. Like no, definitely tell me, give me all the comments. I'm here for the comments. So with my first book, The Matchmaker, which I sadly do not have around me, it had 2 covers so that there was the initial the initial cover, which it's gorgeous. It's like pink and orange and has the Harbour Bridge and everything in the sort of background. I just loved how they combined quite a lot of elements in it, and then they reprinted it in a second cover as well. And so that one was more because The Matchmaker is a rom-com and there is a bit of a Cinderella theme that runs through it. And so the second cover was more just a
Leaning into that.
shoe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say with the second cover, I did not get much input in it at all. Like it was kind of just like, hey, we're doing a second cover. I was like, oh, great. That's wonderful. And this is what we're thinking. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, I mean, I don't like it, and it's really interesting when you are a first-time novelist as to how much you feel like you can
Yes,
push back or how much you can say without sounding like a diva. Do you know? Like, and I honestly did not know what I could or could not do. And then since Matchmaker came out, I've met like quite a lot of other writers, and I met someone who pushed back 12 times for her debut novel on the cover. And I was like, wow, like, okay. So when it came to my second book, they, like Penguin sent me an initial cover and I was just like, no, like this is definitely not it. Like I've shown Rachel that cover. Did I show it to you that night?
I think so. It does. I'm such a terrible memory, but yeah.
Oh, okay, good thing. Yeah, just block it out.
But it is like that sometimes. It's just no, sometimes straight away. You just get a visceral reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very like intense reaction. And I was just like, no, this is definitely not it. And so yeah, so I definitely pushed back, but also like, I was speaking to my agent and she was like, maybe because I'd already done it, but again, like it was kind of like, here are the kind of things that I was thinking. And so then the second cover came around and it was way more in line with, what I was thinking. I think it's really cool. And then we went with, I do have this one here.
I do that sometimes because I've got my background voice novel. I've got a filter on my face, which I love, but it makes it means you can't like hold something.
I love that.
I know it looks like I've got makeup on all the time, and I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's an awesome filter.
I know.
I need to learn this filter. But anyways,
unfortunately, I can't remember how I did it, so I can't even change it or get it off.
You
So
can't take it off. We've tried it. There was once when you tried to take it off and you're like, it's stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think Saman's frozen. Phil, you're back. Okay.
I'm back. Well, I was just going to say, so just like this bit, the sex was scribbled out. And that was really because because I was telling a friend of mine that the book was called Sex Lives of Married Women. And she was like, sex and married women, like that doesn't go together at all. It should be the no sex lives of married women. I was like 100%.
That's so funny. I do like to scribble out. I think that also adds an element of intrigue a little bit more. It tells you that not everything is as it seems, and there's a story here where when you think about it, the sex lives of married women, it'd be like, oh well, who cares? But when you have that in there, you go, oh, there's a story. Something is going on.
So that was really cool. So like they took that on board, and the scribble remained. So yeah, that's good.
Simone, when you were talking about not wanting to be a diva by pushing back on the design of your first novel, Emma was laughing knowingly. So I was like, or maybe I'm presuming knowingly, but Emma, you were laughing at that. I was thinking, oh, did you have some feeling like you shouldn't push back either? You may not want to say though.
I mean,
I don't think publishers listen, just authors. So it's all right.
just delete this part.
Yeah.
But I agree with Saman because, when you're a debut author, you kind of don't want to step on toes that much, right? But I do feel that because I had worked in a bookstore before and I had met a lot of authors through that and heard a lot of stories, I knew that you could push back a little bit.
A certain extent, yeah.
To a certain extent but I understand the whole you not wanting to be a diva thing because I mean I have met some authors that are divas.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to tell us that later. Should not be us. You haven't met me, so I feel okay that it's not me.
I mean, so yeah, it was there's a fine line between it, but the other thing is just knowing that I feel like I've grown up so much in the last decade, and so like now I feel so much more comfortable as a woman in most industries to just ask for what I want. But that didn't come easy. So yeah, always negotiate. Absolutely.
I completely understand. I was lucky that my very first cover was absolutely perfect for the genre at the time. I immediately saw it and had that great thing. But I had other friends who around that time just got shocking covers and they were too scared to say anything because they didn't, want to. And so I do totally understand. But having been around a while now, I would always say, if you don't love your first cover, if you don't love your debut cover, you've got a few books, where you've got to make your mark. And if you don't like your cover and you have a bad feeling about it and readers, then say something because you don't want to regret that later. But it's so hard to do. I totally understand. And I've got even math, having had a number of books published now, sometimes I'm like, oh, should I ask that? Because that's a little bit pushy, I don't want them to be going, Rachel's a diva. So I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And God forbid we be pushy. I think, Emma, to your point, learning as a woman how to actually ask for things because we're so conditioned to think that we're going to be seen as not nice or too pushy. And that's the worst thing.
But men probably don't worry about that, do they?
At all. But Emma, because you mentioned being a bookseller, and in the intro we did mention you being nominated for Bookseller of the Year.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
I didn't win.
Well, it's still amazing accolade just to get that far, I think.
It is. There are lots of
how many booksellers there are out there. Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to talk to both of you about your backgrounds prior to writing. And so, Emma, since we've been talking about you being a bookseller, I'm really like to know how you think being a bookseller may or may not have influenced the sorts of stories you want to tell, and how you want to tell them, if that makes sense.
I was asked this question the other day. I can't remember where, but it was like, was being a was being a bookseller, did it have much of an impact on you becoming an author? It honestly didn't, because I was so busy unpacking boxes and working. I mean, bookselling is technically, it falls under retail. So I
I've
wasn't,
been a bookseller too. So
yeah.
not,
it's like,
not never
Really?
nominated for a yeah.
don't you hate it when customers come in and they say, "Oh, you must get to read all day," and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh."
No, it's like they say that to publishers too. Hey, just wish
Yeah,
I
it's
had a
like,
job where I
I
could read all
wish.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think I mean, one thing I probably what learnt was, have a surname that would get your book eye level, but I still stuck with the Y, and it's like always down at the
But
bottom
that's
shelf.
also hard, isn't it, though? Because like it depends on how many books are in the shelf. Like, or if they've a big store or a small store, they've
Yeah,
if they've
but I
got
did.
50 Lee Child novels or they've only got two of his and pushed
Oh
you.
my gosh,
So
the
yeah.
Lee Child books take up a whole shelf.
Yeah, I know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
did
I
you
did. I did
always
learn
want
quite
to
a
be
lot.
did you
I
always
did.
want to be a writer then?
Sorry,
Did you
say that again,
want to
Rachel.
be this is I guess to both of you as well, but did you always want to be a writer? Obviously Saman started with journalism, so that's a type of writing, but did you both always want to write a novel?
Oh, should I go? We're both like, should we go? Yes, yes, 100%. Like I've always wanted to write a novel. Actually, funnily enough, moved to London after I graduated from university, and I have a degree in economics, which has nothing to do with writing, but
Probably was much
it's
more useful than my degree in writing.
well, I can tell you, right, it's like a very solid immigrant degree. Okay, so it was me going like, I'd like to do English literature to my parents, and them going, well, what's that ever going to get you, right? Which, by the way, they deny now.
Oh,
Okay, so
really?
it's like, excuse me, I remember this
Oh, that's so
conversation.
funny.
Yeah, completely. But so yeah, I've got a degree in economics, and I started off working in finance. But by the time I was 22, literally just started, I realized it wasn't for me, and I moved to London. And I was like, because I didn't know anybody there, and I wanted to start afresh and like feel like I could do anything, and yeah, be a novelist was the thing that I wanted to do with my life. And actually, London and places like London, New York, etc., like, are great because you have creatives come from all over the world, and it's really, really it was very inspiring for me to be around people like that. But yeah, I didn't end up becoming a novelist. I did writing in other mediums. I wrote for the BBC. I was part of a radio drama writing series for the BBC, and
Yeah, I was
like
impressed by your bio when I read it
And
out.
you're also a playwright.
yeah, I
Yeah.
wrote plays, and so it got me started, with writing. But in the background, I was still working away on novels, and I've written like 3 unpublished manuscripts while I was there. But it was just not, I guess, my time, or perhaps it just wasn't meant to happen. And then my time, and this is like just, I guess, in general life, you just don't know how it's going to work out. I ended up having 3 children, and that was when it was my time. After having 3 kids, that's when I got my first book published, and I was like, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, and like fitting it all in with like the book and work and kids, and I had all the time in the world when I was in my 20s. It didn't happen then, so you just
That's
can't
such a
tell.
common story though. Like I hear it, so much. I mean, I was writing before I had my 3 children. But it probably got really serious actually. I thought it was serious before then when I was pregnant with my second. And so it
Mm.
was the same. Like I was really, little time, but I made the most of the time that I did have, or I still
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I say this to people all the time. You just don't know. You just don't
have.
know when. And I'm not even talking just about writing. It's just
Yeah,
about whatever
in
your
general.
passion is in life. Do you know? Like, you just don't know when it's going to happen. And especially in the creative arts, whether you're a musician or a visual artist or a writer, it's brutal. Like, it's a
Yeah.
really, really hard career, as we all know. We all know, right? In
So
different
much out
ways.
of your control, isn't there?
Yes, yeah, exactly. You don't know, like well, the thing, okay, this is going off topic, but the thing
this
that I
is good.
find incredible is that you, as a writer now, not only do you create the product, right? So you've created the product, but then you're also the marketer of the product, right? So you're doing all like the publicity and the marketing and everything. But in terms of like how many units that product will sell,
Mm.
I can't tell, right? Like
Yeah.
it's beyond my control, but it still impacts like your future career, whether you get like, I don't know, like, you know, whether you get another book contract or whatever. So it's just,
And we
yeah.
all still put our effort into all those things and stuff, not knowing whether it's going to work because
I don't, and actually don't think any of it's off topic, because I think this does feed into the writing of future books. Because when you're spending time and energy on the marketing side of it, that is time and energy that's affecting your writing time, for example. But Emma, we will throw to you about the question of whether you always wanted to be a writer while you were a bookseller.
Absolutely. I've wanted to write since I was in primary school, and my mum bought me a Mulan diary from the Disney store.
Oh.
And it came with like this plastic lock, and I used to think, oh, I can write really bad things about my mum and she can't read it. Like things we do. Um, yeah, and very similar to Saman's story, I actually grew up in the UK and then moved to Hong Kong. And after high school, I was supposed to go to the New York Film Academy to study screenwriting.
Oh.
And really long story short, it didn't fall through because my family is a very traditional Chinese family where if you want to work in creative arts, then you might as well not breathe because like how are you going to put, like food on the table? I mean, this is an industry that they just couldn't see a future for me. In the end, I'm like Saman, I just moved to Australia and Saman moved to London, I moved to Australia. I just wanted to go somewhere where I didn't know anyone, where I
Yeah.
could start completely afresh and live a whole new life. And it
That's so
wasn't,
brave, both of you.
yeah, we like to run away. But
Or
it wasn't
run towards is
Yeah.
what I
run
would say.
towards.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't until my 30th birthday, so I'm 37 now. So on my 30th birthday, I remember sitting with like my girlfriends having lunch, and I looked around and I was so happy to be amongst such amazing women, but I couldn't understand why I was so depressed still. And it was because I was still at 30 was not really pursuing what I had set out to pursue.
Mhm.
So then I just enrolled back into university, creative writing. Was it useful as a degree? We'll see. Um,
Look, nothing is wasted, right? And my creative degree was probably half my problem because I hadn't read any books till I started. Honestly, it's a long story, but like so you need to be a reader to be a writer. Right? There was a lot of problems, but so I do think that there's some really good creative writing degrees out there, and nothing's wasted, right? Whatever we do, we learn something. Yeah.
But also, because we didn't know this about either of you, Samana and Emma, that you had made this big move at a certain point in your lives, and this is
It's
a
great
happy
that it's the
coincidence.
same.
But I also think it is a really extraordinary thing to do because of the amount of the stakes are really quite high when you're doing that, and to reach the point at which you're going to do that. That's why I'm saying it's running towards something, not running away from something, because I think that momentum that you must have to do that and commit to it and keep committing to it is extraordinary. And you've both created things in that time.
Yeah.
Comment rather than question. Please feel free to weigh in.
No, and I mean, this is the thing that it is so hard when it comes to creative work is that you just don't know. I mean, so many people give up. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Especially
I
like
tell people to sometimes. Because it'd be easier to get
that's a
another
whole
job, right?
other story, Rachel.
Yeah.
Some people really should be like, okay. No, I mean, like, because I work with a lot of actors, especially like with the theater work that I was doing, and I'm always amazed by actors because with acting, you've got to have I have a thick skin as a journalist because you're constantly, getting rejected. You're constantly, as a writer, you're constantly getting rejected. But with actors, you're being rejected because of, say, the way you look and like all kinds of things,
I
and
never thought of that.
yeah, like
the auditioning process, it's tough, brutal.
it's really, really brutal. I tell you, because when I first moved to London, I auditioned And I thought, God bless you. Like I was, very young, and there was like they were looking for hosts for a music show, and I was like, yeah, the world is my oyster. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to, and it was just horrible because I was wearing like I thought my nicest clothes and whatever, and I come up, and they just look at me, and the way they looked at me just made me feel like that small. Like bless you for even thinking you could be on this show, And
Wow.
it was really, really horrible. Like I felt so awful. And that was my only like only real auditioning experience because I was telling some actor friends about this and they were like really? They're like, that happens all the time, like every time, every time. And I was like, geez, how do you put up with that? Where you just like I mean, because I think casting people must just see so many people all the time, right? And they just see the best of the best looking people. And it must do things to the way you look at yourself. I don't know how it works, but honestly,
I mean, I guess a lot of them maybe do give up as well. Like, and the
well,
people
that's
that
what I'm saying.
the
Like,
people
you
that
just
go
don't
through.
know, right? It's
Yeah,
all about persistence, is ultimately the
100%.
point. Is at least with writing, like, I feel like you can kind of do it on the side and whatever. Acting is a whole other thing. Music is a whole other thing. One of my friends is a visual artist, but it's also a GP, like she's a doctor,
Yeah,
and her art literally is just taking off now. And she's also got two kids and stuff. So like, you just don't know when it takes off. But the
that's
only
so
thing that I've learned with my whole experience of all the different art forms is that the creative work is really, really brutal, and it's becoming more and more brutal as we go. I mean, there's a whole other conversation to do with AI and
yeah,
what's
yeah.
happened to our industry, and
I
but
guess
we keep going.
and then that's it, isn't it? Like you have to. I say this so many times on here. Like you have to do it for the right reasons, right? You can't do it because you want to be famous or you want to be rich, right? If you're doing it for that reason, those reasons,
We're all laughing for people who aren't
yeah,
watching.
yeah, you're
Everyone's
probably
laughing.
going to be disappointed. Like because um, the fact is the majority of authors do not end up famous and rich. The handful do. So if you're doing it for those reasons, then you are definitely going to be disappointed. And I think the other thing is so often, like you mentioned, I never thought about that. I like that you mentioned what's that? I like that you
That's a car in my neighborhood
that's
doing
okay.
wheelies.
It's like a
So
monster or something.
that
But no,
was,
I
yeah.
love that you mentioned the actors because it is that whole thing of persistence, right? And just because you keep going, there are no guarantees, but you have to have that sort of drive, I think, to keep going. You might be lucky, you might get published without having it the first time or whatever. But as we're here to talk a bit about today as well, one book is not a guarantee that you are then going to be publishing books forever. So the next, if you get through the first stage and you might write a book, first book, and it magically sells at auction for a great price or whatever, and you get options and whatever. But then it doesn't guarantee that then even the next one is going to. So like you do have to have the reasons deep down has to be not for all those outside accolades, which means I think we're all just crazy, basically.
But also unwittingly, so before we brought you in, Emma and Simone, we recorded an intro during which I was talking about the importance of showing up and sticking with it. And so this is,
Perfect.
unintentionally actually emerged as the theme, and I think does relate to talking about. So we'll move on to this now, writing second novel. So after you've had the first novel out, and Emma, I'll go to you with this because it was a conversation with you that prompted this episode, actually, where you were talking about working on your second manuscript. So I think the showing up and sticking with itness of it all is as Simone, as you have said, it's hard. It can be brutal. So Emma, how's the second novel going?
Can I just ask one quick question
Oh,
first?
sure.
Can I? Sorry. This is just a few and maybe you'll cover that, but yeah, like there's a few different variations, isn't it? You may have written already, you may have already started writing the next novel before you've got your first one published. You may have sold one book or two, and then if that's a different pressure, like if you haven't got a book, then you're like got certain pressures if you haven't got another contract. But if you do have a contract, you've got other pressures that you didn't have when you were first writing that book with all that. So do you mind just like, if you don't mind, both of you, like giving us before you tell us the whole experience a bit about what that situation it looks like for you? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Let me try. So, before When Sleeping Women Wake, so When Sleeping Women Wake, I have been working and chipping away at for over 10 years.
Wow.
a couple of years ago, I was extremely dedicated to a young adult manuscript that I was working on. And that one was actually shortlisted for the Allen and Unwin Voices in the Intersection mentorship. And I remember getting quite good feedback on that. And then, I was like, okay, maybe I will submit that one to some agents. And it went really badly because, rejections are, we get them all the time. Rejections are nothing new in this industry. And I remember actually getting one that said, um, you know, loved your writing style, but I already have an Asian author on my list for the following year. And
Oh,
so this is not new. I've actually spoken to a lot of women and men of
I'm
color
not
in
surprised in a way, but I am also
oh,
horrified
this
that
is
people.
yeah, so this is actually quite a common. I can see Samar nodding because it's a very common response, and it shouldn't be. But
No.
anyway, that's what I got. Um, and I think I lost confidence for a good couple of weeks where I was like, is there a quota in the industry?
Yeah.
Like they can only have 5 Asians this year, or
How
and I couldn't
ridiculous.
understand it. But then I thought, okay, look, with writers, I think what we do is like we also put things away in the drawer and go move on to something else to kind of like reinvigorate ourselves and like, feel passionate towards the whole writing process again. So I went back to When Sleeping Women Wake and worked on that for the next 2 years, and then found the confidence to submit to agents again this time. And this experience was much different. I actually ended up with 5 agent offers in 2 weeks.
Wow, that's amazing.
And suddenly the tables turned, and it wasn't so much, like what I could offer them. I was the one asking what they could offer me.
Mhm.
And that felt really empowering, like
And as
compared to
Simone says, you never know what's around the corner, right? You never know
you just
just
never
when it's going to
know.
change.
Yeah. And so, yeah, just from the previous experience, I felt, like almost validated again that, maybe my YA just wasn't the right fit for those agents, but I'm still an okay writer sort of
Yeah.
thing.
And
Um,
sometimes they just need an excuse, and that was a ridiculously terrible excuse. But it could have just been, hang
I
on,
know.
give her a reason why, and I'm just going to say that.
Also because that excuse presupposes that readers have a quota.
Yeah.
That's why I find it so extraordinary. It's this whole idea of, oh, well, I can't take on another writer of color because I've got one. It's like, oh, okay, but I don't actually think readers are out there going, well, I'm going to tick that book off the
Well,
list.
I
That's
really
it
don't
for the
think
year.
they are, because I would just look at the cover and the title. To be honest, if I hadn't heard anything about anyone's book, I'm not going to go to the back cover or to see who they are, right? It's
Yeah.
going to be the blurb I look at, the cover and the title, and that's going to get me in. So yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So I
Quite.
reckon that might have just been a terrible excuse, and
I
yeah,
would have preferred if she just said no, or maybe
yeah,
just don't respond at all. I would
yeah,
have
I
been
completely
okay.
agree. Yeah,
But I was gonna say that it's not unusual,
yeah,
and it's not, like and people always end up acting shocked. But when you are a person of color, you hear so many outrageous things on the regular
yeah.
that you're kind of like, yeah, that happened. Okay, moving on, because like life has all these microaggressions all the time, and if you
I
let every
know.
single one of them get you down, then you cannot function basically.
No,
And so but I would say the thing that has, honestly, I would say even in the last 2 to 3 years, the industry has changed a lot. Like
in a good
it's
way.
yeah, for sure. Like I think it's just, but I'm just saying, like it's taken a long bloody time, right?
Yeah,
Like we're
yeah.
literally talking like 2020s, where we're coming to the realization, well, maybe we need to cover all diversities. Like, yeah, obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
like that has always been the case. The whole reason why I moved to London is I grew up in Australia, was I didn't see myself reflected at all in on the screen, on like, the books that I read,
Yeah.
yeah, like all of that, right? And then I moved to the UK and I didn't have like anyone, like I had any connection to the UK, but felt more like I belonged there because I saw people who looked like me reflected back on TV. You know, I never thought to become a playwright. Like I always thought it was old white guys who were writing plays, you know.
Yeah.
And then I moved there and I was like, oh wow, like there's so much diversity in theater. I never thought that that's something that I could do. But yeah, let's try it. Let's see what, you know, what writing in that medium looks like. So for me, it was just really visibility. Visibility plays a huge part in your sense of belonging, right, to a place. And so coming back to Australia, and you know, when I came back to Australia, I was already a mom. My you know, two of my kids were born overseas, and so I was always so conscious of, firstly, when I turned on the TV, I was like, geez, I grew up watching these people and they're still on television. Like, what's
Oh
like,
my goodness, I know.
things
I
haven't
wanted to be the
changed.
newsreader for Channel 7 Perth, right, when I
Yeah.
was like 10.
Yeah.
And the newsreader for Channel 7 Perth is still the same person now. I'm 45.
Yeah.
So
It's
thank
crazy.
goodness I gave up that dream, right?
Yeah. But you know, so for me, it was always just like making sure that the experiences that I had were not reflected like for my
Yeah.
kids, right? So like that they saw themselves.
So how did you
And
go about finding that? Like, did you specifically, I mean, it sounds like you would have had to really seek out shows and stuff in Australia more. Like, how did you fix that
well,
problem?
because I
Children,
mean, like, you know, you've got streaming services now, right? So
Yeah,
like it's
that's
all
true.
it's all, you know, so it's all
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
it's not
Well,
our
it's
5
global.
channels that
That's
we
so
were
true.
like, you know, watching. It's
Yeah,
all
who
over the
actually
road.
watches free to wear? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So for good or bad, you know, we're watching like a whole bunch of things, but I think like for me it was just really sort of seeing like that diversity of voice and that diversity of voice and the recognition that it's getting literally in, yeah, maybe the last 5 years has uh, you know, opened up opportunity. But what I find incredible, right? So I wrote, Matchmaker came out in 2023. There's not that many people of color writing in genre. Like I don't see that many writers of color in romance or
Yeah, yeah.
in crime, or like there are a handful of people. Literally, like, because I had someone ask me this question, I think at a festival. They're like, "Oh, well, like, you know, who else is like doing?" Because when I first started writing, my whole thing was, I hope that this means that there's going to be more writers of color writing romance. You know, I haven't seen that. Like, I haven't seen that
Yeah.
happen. You know, so
We, as I'm a member of Romance, like on the Committee of Romance Australia, or as Australian, obviously we get, you know, being people highlight that sort of things to us, and you know, we even try to get speakers from overseas and find that actually in the romance genre, like in Australia, it's very hard to get people that are writing romance. And the thing is with romance novels and, you know, genre fiction as well, right? People write a lot of books, and when you're going to a conference, to be fair, if you're paying money to be there, you want someone who is successful and has been doing this a long time and has ridden through like highs and lows of the industry and stuff. And as you said, in Australia, it's actually hard to get that. So hopefully we'll get there. But, you know, and publishing books like yours in the genre and reading them, and shout out to everyone to go and grab Australian books. And that's the only way we're going to get there, right? If we're reading them and, you know.
well, I mean, this is what I say to people all the time. Is like, look, I'm glad that the like my books and like books, Emma's books, and like all these kind of books are coming out, but you
have
know,
to
we
buy
need
them.
people to read them. Yeah.
Yeah, because
We
it's a
need to
business
show,
at the
yeah,
end,
it's a
right?
business.
Isn't it?
Like
And yeah.
ultimately, it's a business, and in order to keep having, you know, people like us writing, we need to have the public buying these books and showing
Yeah.
that there is like a market for it. So for me, that was really important. But going back to the second book,
Yeah. What was your
um,
situation? Had you written it
the
yet?
second book, writing a second book is like bloody hard. It's like, and it's funny that you said the second book syndrome, because it was so tricky. I went and I Googled writing second book feelings. Like it was just
Don't
something
worry,
like,
I still Google that after like I started my 23rd
yeah.
novel. How do you write a novel? Like
Yeah, I was like feeling terrible, finding like you know, it was just all these like jumble of words. But yeah, because it's I think it was more just because I knew what to expect after going through that whole, you know, it's so exciting having your book come out. It's so incredible. And then going on that journey of where that book goes is you learn a lot. You learn a lot along the way. And then,
Can you share any of those things you've learned? Like some
what do I learn? Again, like a lot of it is out of your control. It's super exciting. It's not going to make you rich. It's not going to, look, you could be the unicorn. There is,
yeah.
I know of one unicorn who it did, but it will very likely not make you wealthy or famous in any way. But you need to keep writing against the grain, and that your voice matters. But also, I think I got like super anxious, like it induced a lot of anxiety in me. And
I always say I
impacted
don't think this career is very healthy.
No, it's not great for your mental health, it's and also just like, getting like numbers, like this is how much your book sold. You're like, oh, like really? Okay.
Do you think, just on that, I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, I won't mention names, but I have a really good friend who put a first book out for about 7 years ago and has had a few since then, quite a few since then. But I remember she said she was so shocked that her first book didn't sell 50,000 copies, right? And I'd been published for a few years by now, and I was like, you thought it was going to sell 50,000 copies in Australia? Like, some people do, but they're usually people that have been going for quite a while or have been like, had a really, out there hit. Like, not that I know Jane Harper's numbers, but I'm sure For the Dry sold more than 50,000, right? People like that. It's very rare that your first book,
Yeah.
it's very rare even after a few books.
Exactly. And I mean, it's
don't know this, so you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's good and what's considered not good, and that also depends on genre and where your book sits, right?
And campaign. And the campaign that's attached to it.
Yes, and that's the other thing, right? It's like I didn't realize that, especially when you're at a big publishing house like I'm with Penguin, is that there is a marketing budget attached to, different writers and different books, and then the publicity campaign that goes around it will be different. Okay, so all these things, and then reviews, like you have created a public piece of work that is going to go out. So I do not read Goodreads, right? And I recommend that to almost every writer. It's like, don't read it. Personally, it's not for me, but there are some writers who love reading their Goodreads reviews, because
I think you should be very careful of when you read it. Like, you really have to know you're in an okay mental health state.
Yeah,
I don't look at it either. So
yeah, I made that choice.
I used to a lot more than I do now, because I did go through a bad patch. Now I just tend to look at the top bit to see what the rating overall is. If I see it's gone down, I'm like, I'm not going to look. I'm not going to look who hates my book and so much that they've,
Well, do you know what was funny?
With
Matchmaker, when Matchmaker came out, so that Penguin created like my Goodreads like section, and it hadn't even been published to the public. They just created it, and someone went on and put 3 stars. I was like, what? How are you putting 3 stars? You've not read the book.
Do you know, some people apparently have a thing that, when they want to read a book, they'll just rate it 3 stars because they haven't got there yet. And it's like, no, don't do that.
don't randomly check a 3 stars for no reason.
We did it in our first season. We did a wonderful episode with Sally Hepworth about reviews. So if anyone really wants to deep dive into that, go back and find
She loves a 1-star review. She finds them entertaining and motivational. Yes.
Yeah. But you need to get to Sally Hepworth's level where you can find it entertaining. Where you're like, why? That does not bother me at all, or my sales, because I'm Sally Hepworth, right?
Yeah.
But it impacts someone like me whose book is like, this is my first book, right? And
it probably doesn't have it. I'd love Sophie to say if I'm wrong here, but I feel like from what I've heard, like, I mean, this is such a small amount of people on Goodreads, right? Especially in Australia, that the publishers don't really care if, Bob and Tina down the road gave you 1 star. It doesn't like
the publishers won't, but you will, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you will. Yeah. So like these were just some of the lessons that I learned when I had my first book come out. It's like, it is a public piece of work. It's going to be out there. People are going to have all kinds of thoughts on it. People are going to misread.
Yeah,
like people are going to like, you might have intended it in some way, and they might, see it a whole other way, and that's fine, because it's a piece of work, and that's the beauty of writing, right? So all those things, there's a lot of things that are out of your control, and holding so much emotion and tension. Like I had I had a screenwrites auction for the screenwrites for Matchmaker, right? So that was
Yep.
really exciting. I got to speak to all these film producers. Suddenly you're like, oh, the movie's gonna be coming out, like, in a couple of years. Like, no, it didn't. They reverted back to me actually. Like after a
Uh,
while, they were like, here you go.
Another
I mean,
painful jab, right?
yeah, there, like thanks.
Um,
I mean, I managed to sell it to like other producers, but what I'm saying is that it's a whole journey. And so when it came to the second book coming out, I was much more protective of myself, I
yeah.
think is the way of saying
Had you
it. Is
written this book before, like you had
mm,
before the Matchmaker came out, or did you start writing it after that?
after that, yeah, like no, it was in my head for a long time, but it was like written very quickly, and yeah, it all sort of happened rather quickly, considering that it came out 2 years after.
Yeah.
But it's very different to Matchmaker. It's not a rom-com. It's much more darker in the themes and quite dramatic. And it's got a like sex in the title, which in itself brings like a whole other type of attention, which is what it is. So, but I knew
Oh, Saman, you're frozen again.
I have a lot of content and themes in it, which I don't want my parents. It means that I just needed to come at it from like a place of it's now out. There's not much you can do about it, and you've done the best that you could,
So true.
and hope for the best. But other than that, I have to let it go. I have to let it
I,
go.
were there any writing struggles with the second? I mean, it seems like you wrote it quite quickly, but was that very different in writing to your first novel?
I think I had more confidence writing this book compared to the first one because with the first, uh, like there's a lot of like in the first there's a lot of Urdu statements in it. Okay, so which is like the language that is my mother tongue, which is I'm from Pakistan, and every time I had anything in Urdu, I would put like a translation
Oh,
next to it, and my editor was like, "Stop explaining yourself. Stop doing that. And it was actually so freeing. So I mean, I scrapped all the translations, and we've got Google now. If you really care,
yeah.
just go and look it up,
Otherwise, if they can't work it out from what's around it, yeah.
Yeah, if you can't get the context. So I felt more confident in my ability, and I knew, and I know, like I don't just write novels, like I write in a whole lot of different mediums. I'm a confident writer. If someone
Yeah.
doesn't like it, it's just not for them, and that's not something I can control. Not every story should be for everyone, to be honest with you. So I I am a fast writer anyway because journalism teaches you hard deadlines, right? So you're constantly motivated by a
Yeah.
deadline. I am anyway. So it came out, I think, okay. Like I think it came out in like a big. There was a lot of stuff that I was carrying, a lot of stuff that was happening with my friends during COVID. A lot of people getting divorces, a lot of people separating from partners and stuff, and what that looked like, when you've been with someone for a long time. I was really, really keen to explore that. So it just went like a big gush
That's great.
out of me. Yeah. So
And
yeah, I
are you
think
writing another book now?
no.
No, yeah.
That'll be the third novel syndrome, right?
Okay.
And I'll need to talk to you about that, Rachel, because I feel like that's a whole other story. It's like my dad, like
There should be a series of books, right? It'll be first novel or debut, and then second novel syndrome. So you know how like James Patterson has like Women's Murder Club, and I think it's like first degree, second. We could do like just it's a series of an author who writes all these books and the
I
different.
think after your third, we don't care, mate.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
you're
true.
doing it fine.
What about you, Emma? Have you obviously your first book has just come out, so it's still early days, but are you writing a second one, and how's that going?
Yeah, I am. I wasn't expecting to get a two-book deal. I was like, yay, we've got this one. And then I read the contract again properly. And I'm like, oh crap.
Oh, that can be scary in itself, right?
Yeah, because I wasn't really ready.
Yeah.
But so I am the opposite of Saman in this case, where I actually have less confidence going into this one because the first one um was it had been brewing for like 10
Yeah.
years and the historical research had like I had been reading and researching for so long, and these are all family stories that have stayed with me since I was 8 years old. So I feel like I've had most of my life to kind of conjure this whole thing up, you know? Whereas with the next book, I'm literally starting from scratch. It's like clean slate. I need to figure out deadlines. I need to look into which history books I should be reading, where I should, like, which archives I should be looking at. Like, do I need to go travel to the place that I'm going to
Yeah.
be writing about? I've already had several Zooms with history professors at different universities just to talk about the time and place. And I'm stressed the hell out.
Oh, big hugs.
But I think I'm also extremely excited because I have chosen a story that is extremely connected again to my family's history.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I lean towards is if I can find an emotional thread that links the story to my family or myself, then I find comfort in then the research process. And I find that I feel more guided when I start writing. And it's more that the stories of those that came before me kind of show me the way rather than me having to sit there and literally start painting a picture with nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emma, I didn't realize that the stories in this novel were drawn from your family's history, and I'm going to let people read it and find out just what that means. But that's a lot to carry as a person of this generation, I would think.
Yeah, because as well, and I said this the other day at the event, is that, when it comes to occupation and war, you know, I haven't experienced war. I'm very lucky that I haven't, very privileged. But the experiences of my ancestors have bled through to now.
Yeah.
So, and I feel as though those traumatic experiences will forever bleed through generations because war never ends, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So as it comes to this second novel, it's almost like it sounds like as a writer in terms of the like the functional parts of starting it, you were feeling less confident, but now you've realized that the story part of it you can be confident about because you've connected to that.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
you need to find, Saman, the story connection in your third idea.
You know, Rachel, you sound like my dad. He's like, right, books
I'm
just
going
come
to
out,
assume
but
that's a
what are you working
compliment.
on? It's a compliment. But it was just like, I was like, Dad, because he's like, yeah, your books come out. What are you working on next? Hey, Dad, books just bloody come out. What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah,
isn't
sorry,
that
that's
enough?
probably just me, because I've done nothing else. Like, I don't have another job. Not, and I'm not saying that's a good thing because, like, you've got other things to do as well, which I think is a really helpful. It means that your focus is not completely on this crazy world, whereas I'm always
No,
like,
it is. It
I'm
is,
gonna work on the
Rachel.
book.
It is. It is completely in this crazy world. I think it's more just like, as Emma will find out, when you have your second book come out, that's a whole other situation to your first. Like, I think the first is like, for me, it's like when you have your first child, you're
Baby,
like,
you don't know
wow,
what's going on, but you're
yeah. And then you have your second, you're like, okay, you're a bit more, and then when you're coming to your third, you're like, oh gosh, you're like, you're a veteran in this whole situation. And then, I mean,
a
I
bit
don't
more
even know,
cynical,
Rachel,
maybe a bit more cynical kind of thing. And I guess, the brutality, as you said, can get to you after a while. And I think you've got to sometimes maybe dig deep about,
yeah. Do you know
what
what's interesting? It's interesting that you become more, I think when you're writing, maybe your first and your second, it's really like personal stuff that's really interesting. I think I've become aware of like the market. I don't ever want to become aware of the market and like
yes,
all
that
and
I
and that
100% agree.
whole like it gets in the way of creativity,
Yeah,
because I've never written for a certain
yeah,
audience or market or whatever, and then numbers become like all that stuff I
it
do
gets
not
in
care
your head.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
no, I don't want to care about it, because it's not,
and
it
that's a
gets in the
very
way
good
of
tip, I think,
creativity.
to try and really
Yeah.
not care about it and just to go, okay. I went to a launch of someone the other night and it's her third book, and she said to me and my friend, I've done my best, and now I'm kind of just going, I've had two different experiences. I know that, there's not really else I can do. I'm just going to enjoy the fact that I have actually written a third book, and most people don't even finish one that say they're going to. But I know exactly what you mean in terms of, I think I used to be really, really fast when I had little kids and I wasn't published yet, and I was just always excited to get to my computer, in the time when I had and that. And then with each book, I mean, I'm still generally fast, but it's I'm not fast per day, if that makes sense. People look at my output and say, oh, you must be really fast. No, it's just that I consistently show up, right? But I've slowed down, and I think that is because, and I had to learn to ignore it for the last few, like to really try hard to ignore it. I got so many voices in my head from the reviews that you were talking about, people saying, oh, Rachel's not good at this part, so I'm like stressing about that. And then edits that I've had where people have said, oh, is that too contrived? So then I'm like, well, I better not make this contrived. The more people's feedback you got, the more things you're thinking about. And so you have to make a conscious decision to switch all that off, and it can be hard to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Emma, I'm interested for you just on the point of feedback. You, of course, have 3 different publishers.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
What was the editorial process like for When Sleeping Women Wake? Was there 3 lots of feedback coming in?
It's like Rachel said, there were voices in my head. But honestly, it was I was talking to another author friend of mine about the experience, and I think I got really lucky, or it's just the editors that I ended up working with were really fantastic and extremely collaborative. So even when I did, but I'm also extremely I don't know if it's just from uni days, but like when someone gives you feedback, I'm really onto it. Like I've always taken feedback really well. Maybe because my mom raised me, I don't know.
That's hilarious.
So I have like really thick skin, and I told myself, like, there was a lot of self-talk going into it, where I told myself everything these professionals have to say is not to shit on you. It's genuinely to make it better, or it's genuinely to ask a question they don't understand.
Yeah,
So
very true.
yeah, I always took it as really constructive, and it was really fun actually to have different, and it's interesting because the US wanted more romance threaded through it.
Okay.
Sophie's like, yeah, of course they did.
Wow.
Whereas the UK were very happy for me to have the whole, like Pride and Prejudice, just hands barely touching kind of
Yeah.
Mhm.
thing, whereas the US was like, I want a kiss. And, so I think I learned something there as well, just how different they work based on their market needs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and then again to that point about thinking or not thinking about the market. I mean, for you, it's 3 different markets that are having an influence.
Yeah. Do you feel like in some ways that probably gives you I don't know, I'm just putting my thoughts into your head, but like you've kind of got 3 places for it to fly. You know what I mean? It's like, because things can be very different from territory to territory. Someone can do well in England, but not here, and they can do well here but not in the US, or vice versa. So you could have a different response, or a different, not response so much probably, but different levels of sales. I mean, obviously the sales are going to be different worldwide because it's populations and stuff like that. Well, not necessarily, trust me, I've had US sales that were much smaller than my sales here, but you know what I mean, like but you have like 3 kind of big territories, and possibly foreign translations, I guess, where it has a chance to thrive.
I hope so.
And so I'm interested actually for both Emma and Saman. So Emma, as you're heading into writing, or you're in the process of writing your second novel, would you consider, or maybe you are already working with someone to sort of coach you through it, almost like a mentor? And Saman, because you've come from theatre and script writing, that is inherently a collaborative environment for a writer. So have you, as a novelist, actually used someone to, like, as a sounding board, or just a small writing group or that sort of thing? So Saman, I'll start with you on that question.
So I think my situation is quite unique. With the matchmaker, I actually didn't complete the novel before it got sold. So I had the outline.
So you were always writing your second, like some of the pressures that someone might have a second book you would have had for the first, because
yeah. So it was sold on like a few chapters and outline, which was incredible. So what was really amazing for me as a first-time novelist was to work so collaboratively with my editors at Penguin, and they were great. Like it really worked out really well. It was such good training. But having said that, I also had a lot of background in writing, right? So like I literally was writing for the BBC for 5 years and worked with, incredible editors. It's really good training ground actually over there for that. So I've always worked collaboratively. I think what Emma said is amazing, and it's because I've been an editor as well in journalism. Like, I was worked on the opinion desk at The Guardian. I was an editor at SBS for various like different channels, and getting feedback has been so interesting to see just from the other side how writers react to it. And I've been shocked as to how badly some writers take feedback, right? Like it actually, because I'm also a writer, and so I've also received feedback. So when I was being on the other side, I was like, when I tell you, like mouth agape, like I was just, wow, you really wrote that in an email and sent that to me, and you thought that was okay to do. Like really surprising. The other thing, with Australia especially, is it's a very small industry, okay? It's very, very small, and we all talk. Okay, so we won't talk on a podcast, but we will probably meet you somewhere and we'll
everyone
share
knows everyone.
information. Just being polite. Like that's my number one thing. Be professional, be polite. Don't go on social media ranting and raving about somebody, which I've seen with my eyes, and I'm like, like, what are you thinking? People can see this, right? People can see this. So like I've always been open, and I think it's a really hard skill to learn, especially when you're a new writer, that feedback and working with editors is really to make your work the best possible work it can be. It's not a slight against you or your writing or anything like that. And so it was good for me to come with that knowledge when I started, working with, Penguin on these books, is that I knew they were trying to make my work better. But I'd be very, the thing is, I have seen a lot of projects, especially in screen, death by committee, where you have a lot of people feedback on a project, and it just kills what was the core of the project, which was whatever made it special and unique for us to all work on it. So what I would say, having learned from all my experiences, I take on feedback, but I take it on from people whose feedback I trust. Not everyone's feedback is
And you
valid.
don't need to take it all, right? You can, and you don't
You do
exactly
not.
even need to take it on exactly how they give it to you. They might,
Exactly.
jump
Yeah.
in. Right.
Yeah, even with your professional editors who you're working with, at publishing houses, it's called feedback. It's literally like, this is but it's your piece of work. It's your writing. So it's really ultimately up to you to take it wherever you want it. And that's, comes back to initially how we started with pushing back on going, well, no, actually, I think this is what I really believe in terms of my piece of work. So I do take on feedback, but I'm become careful as to from whom.
Such good advice from both of you, I reckon, here. So much insight into, the early writing processes and getting published, because I'm sure all of us have been writing in one way or another for a very long time, as you've been writing since you were 5, you've been writing plays and, but Sophie and I have maybe forgotten about some of those early, what's the word? Not hurdles, issues and stuff. So it's really good to be able to talk with you guys and give a different type of experience. I think that's how I feel.
But also, I didn't give Emma a chance to answer the question about whether she was actually writing, like in a writing group, or working with someone as she does her second draft.
I thought I got away from that question. I was just
sorry. I was trying for you, Emma.
Oh, it's all right, Rachel. Next time. I'm an editor by day.
Right.
And so I work with a lot of writers. One writer actually just signed with Sophie, so I'm really excited for that.
So cool.
And I have to say, with Saman saying who you get feedback from, it's very interesting because there are writers who take your feedback and they're very upset by it, and I always say, take 3 or 4 days, ignore me, don't talk to me, and then read the feedback again. And then if you can truly justify why you think my feedback is not valid, then you should keep what you've got because you're following your voice and what you've written. But if after a few days you read an editor's feedback again and you kind of open up to the idea of what they're saying, then it's something to look into. But I can't edit my own work to save my life. I cannot see it the way that I see other people's manuscripts when I'm editing their work. I'm so close to the material. So my agent's really collaborative. We do Zooms, I send her chapter by chapter updates and we just talk through it. And then I have an editor that I use, Carly Slattery, who's based in New South Wales, and she also was she did a manuscript assessment on When Sleeping Women Wake at its most youngest form, like several years ago. And then I just have one best friend who is my beta reader. So, like Saman, I don't just want everyone's advice. It's just these three people that I'll listen to and accept feedback from. Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I actually feel like we could take you on a separate podcast about editorial work since you both work in that space too. But we will wrap it up because we've had you talking for a while. But these are, yeah, you both extraordinary writers, quite different to each other. And Saman, I think you delve so deeply into character that from the start of your books, we really feel like we know your characters. And Emma, with your novel, it's just this incredible, moving sweep of history, but also with people we come to know and love and mourn for in some ways. So I'm going to leave it there. And we've had you talking for a while. And thank you so much for your time, Saman Shad and Emma Pei Yin. And hope to see you down the road, maybe on another podcast episode.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
We probably don't. We probably don't. I've been so wrapped listening to Saman and Emma talk because they're so interesting, and I know
that was great.
So I'm without words now. There we go.
I just think that was a really, really good chat. As I probably tried to say, I just think it's really useful for us to talk to writers at different stages in their career, for us to remind, like to remember, but also and to like it's like having friends at different ages, right? You've all got things to offer. There's things maybe we're too, like we've seen it some things so many times, or we've dealt with something we kind of like are a bit maybe take things for granted or blasé about something and get a fresh look at it. But also, so I really loved that they both got first books out, or second for Saman, and we're just so honest as well. Especially, I mean, the journey is really just starting and it's fascinating, and I'm sure it's sounds like it's going to be amazing, but I really appreciate Saman's honesty and vulnerability and how she felt, after certain books, the first book came out and then she's getting the next one out, and it is a scary thing we do. We put ourselves out there.
Yeah.
And not just books now, right? Because you have to then also go and stand in front of people and talk about your book.
Online as well. So I do feel like there are threads we could pull out from that conversation and take further, but our listeners / viewers have been listening and viewing for a while now, so we'll let them go and then you and I'll go away and think about it, I reckon.
Thanks so much, everyone, and don't forget, if you have any questions for us, please email us or Insta us,
and you can leave us a review if you would like on a platform, or if you're on YouTube you can like and subscribe. That'd be great.
And on Substack, we're everywhere now.
We're everywhere. I'll see you later.
Thanks
Rach.
everyone. Bye, Soph.
Yeah.